Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So, again, over the weekend, plan advance to reform the Chicago Police Department, turn it more into sort of a college campus, focused on form over substance.
Black Lives Matter groups over Chicago police, right?
Yeah. Sure, you want to
take into account their opinion before you take into the people that you've hired.
Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. Let's explore that. What did you feel? What are you trying to convey when you say that? How can we translate that into public policy or department procedure? Sure. The highlights from the reform plan advanced by Tiny Dancer and Attorney General Fivehead include, but not limited to, investigate anonymous complaints against officers.
Yeah. Okay.
You're going to need to hire more.
Fraught with danger.
You're going to need to hire more investigators because that's about the only thing you'll be able to do if you can just file an anonymous complaint against any cop who rubs you the wrong way for any reason. Require the department to track foot pursuits.
No idea what that means.
Don't they have body cameras so that it's like tracking?
Right.
It's the tracking is attendant to the job. But maybe there'll be more detail that Kevin Graham can help us with. Limit the use of tasers.
And do what? Use your words instead?
Yeah, exactly. Why does it always have to be violence? Why don't you just use your words to achieve, a better sense of brotherhood? Yes. Yeah. Somebody's pointing a gun at you.
Can you put that gun down?
Yeah, please.
I'm not feeling safe right now.
Please put that gun down. Safe spaces for Chicago police officers. Require police use terms appropriate to a person's gender identity.
Now this is just getting silly.
Sir, we're going to get to the robbery in progress. But first, how should I refer to you?
Are you a he or a she?
I mean, I don't want to,
I don't want to
be out of
step on your
bounds
toes.
here. Yeah. So those are the highlights. 5,000, round numbers, 5,000 murdered, 20,000 shot in Tiny Dancer's 7 years as mayor. And this is what they've come up with. Remember, the Department of Justice, Loretta Lynch, when she came to town, had that presser with Tiny Dancer and everybody. Systemically racist organization. That was the conclusion. 12,000 plus officers, approximately half of whom are minority, are all white supremacists. Now, to be fair, that was just a cut and paste from their report on Ferguson, their report on Baltimore, their report on every police department. How's this going to shake out when it comes to what the public is actually concerned about, which is their peaceful coexistence, peace in their neighborhoods, and also I think there's a lot of concern about the safety of police officers, too. Kevin Graham, president of Chicago Fraternal Order of Police, joins us now. Kevin, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks. After that intro, I don't know why you need me on. I think you've got a pretty good sum of what's going on in the consent decree.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, is there anything redeeming about it from your perspective and your membership's perspective, obviously?
Well, the things that are good in there could be done on their own. They don't need a consent decree. One of the things is that they are going to expand employee assistance and hire more clinicians. Many of our officers go through traumatic incidents almost on a daily basis, and often they need to go to employee assistance where we have counselors to walk them through that so they don't suffer PTSD. I can't begin to tell you some of the traumatic things that I've seen over my 35 years of being a police officer. And so I think that is a step in the right direction. But most of what's in there is to pacify, for lack of a better term, the progressives in this city who believe that that the police are the problem. Not that when police give lawful commands to drop the weapon and they refuse to do so, give lawful commands to stop running and they refuse to do so, somehow it's not the fault of the criminal, it's the fault of the police. And that's what a lot of these reforms in this consent decree are trying to address, trying to correct the police and not the public.
Well, it's clearly it's silly at times when you have to require terms of how to properly address someone, he or she. I mean, does that seem like the most egregious part of this consent decree?
Well, actually, some of the things that I find worse than that are certainly doing away with signed affidavits. I mean, I think it's a common um, it's
For
a
the
common
complaints.
practice to face your accusers in this
Yeah.
country. And so, if somebody's going to make a statement, if somebody's going to say that the police did something, then that's fine. If we have bad police officers, we can get rid of them. And certainly, there has been no shyness on the part of the public to make accusations, even when they're wrong, about the police. So we want to make sure that we can defend ourselves and go after the people who do make false allegations. But getting back to your original statement about addressing somebody as ma'am or sir, I worked in the 19th district. I worked over around Addison and Halstead, and I don't know how you would determine that just by looking at somebody as to who you are going to address into what gender. Certainly if they say, I'd rather be addressed as something, that's fine. No problem with that. But to simply to try and spend time to decipher what gender somebody is or how they want to be addressed is ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, so I'm not going to ask
You.
Yeah, yeah.
You put
I-
your hands up. You.
I should have asked per the new protocol, Kevin. Is it okay if I refer to you by your
Sir.
as cisgender sir, Mr. Graham? Is that okay if I don't?
As I said, I've been a policeman a long time. I've
Never
been
had
called
that
everything
question?
in the book, but
Never had that question, huh?
Kevin or sir is just fine.
Yeah, I think the mustache is a bit of a giveaway.
Kind of.
It can be.
well, yeah.
It can be. The real question I think a lot of people have in Chicago is, so then how does this impact, if this were to be ratified, how will this impact how police do their job or not do their job? In other words, the impact of police officers not feeling like they have the backing of the civilian political authorities, not feeling like they can do things that allow them to keep themselves and each other safe on the streets.
Well, first of all, I think we just need to go back a few years when the ACLU wanted to expand the stop card and put in discipline to officers should they fill out the cards incorrectly or the paperwork incorrectly. We dramatically stopped going out and stopping people, because who wants to be suspended or disciplined simply because we fill out a 3-page paperwork incorrectly and make a legitimate mistake? And that became encumbersome upon the police, and so we only stop it when it's absolutely necessary. And going up to people who are hanging out on the street corner, which we used to do regularly, we don't do anymore, and that's part of the problem. So when the ACLU gets involved and tries to think that they are going to correct an idea that the police are doing something wrong, it leads to a chilling effect, and the crime has gone up ever since. So if this consent decree goes into effect, the city will become far less safe than it already is.
Why was there a need to limit the use of tasers? Is that a systemic problem there in the department, or what does that mean?
I am unaware that there is a systematic problem with tasers. They brought the tasers in because when we had an incident where we called for a taser and there wasn't any available, there was no sergeant available, and it led to consequences that political leaders felt were incorrect. They decided to buy more tasers, spend millions of dollars on tasers, putting them out there. Now they're worried that we're using the tasers too much. I think they need to decide what it is they're planning on doing. I mean, certainly they're sending inconsistent messages to the members.
Yeah, I'd definitely be an advocate for continuing to buy millions of dollars in tasers. I've got some stock in a taser company. Yeah. So here's the thing. Why don't you just beat them to the punch and suggest that we disarm the police? They just go around in like mall security, like Paul Blart Mall security uniforms and politely ask people to stop killing one another.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work, and I am a little concerned about the safety of my members. So I think I'm going to take a pass on that.
Not going to
and
go that
I think
direction.
instead we're just going to fight the Attorney General in court on the consent decree, which is what we are doing now. And I think I do believe we will be successful, and I have some very good attorneys working on it, and I think we're going to do fine when we get in front of Judge Dow.
The trust issue, though, too, on a serious note. So I'm talking to a friend of mine who's an African-American gentleman yesterday about that shooting in South Shore. And, we both watched the same videotape, and he says that the reason the guy was spinning away is cops opened fire on him before he spun away. He was handing his wallet or his ID over, and then somebody came up behind him, and they shot him before he ever went for his gun. And there's no evidence of that on the video. But I think it speaks.
It's just not true.
Right, and I suspect it's not true. It doesn't make any sense. But it does speak to the lack of trust. And this is a sophisticated, smart guy. But it speaks to the mistrust that exists between the black community in particular, Latino community to some extent too, and the Chicago Police Department. Now, some of that, of course, has been media and politician generated, but it doesn't matter. It's still real. And even though, by the way, public polling, the Chicago Police Department has a much higher standing in the minds of Chicago residents than does, say, CPS. Just point of order. But there's still a real problem in the neighborhoods that your men and women have to police, and trust is a big factor there. Are there things that FOP is advocating or suggesting to the politicians that CPD and to CPD brass that CPD should do to try and address that problem?
Over a year ago, I met with the superintendent, and one of the things I suggested was that oftentimes on Sunday mornings it's one of our slower times during the week, and that my suggestion was that officers stop in places of worship so they see officers in a different context, that we are all there to support each other's faith and to reassure them that we're there to protect them. Yet I've seen nothing come out about that. That is one way that doesn't cost us anything, that I think connects with the community, and that is just one of several things that I would be suggesting should I be asked. But of course, the Attorney General's people, the only thing that we really were discussing was about our contract, and then and certainly we made suggestions, but there was no feedback from them. It certainly is disheartening that they go and talk to everybody and get their input except us and how to actually do this. To reform, if reform is needed in the Chicago Police Department, and I'm a little skeptical on some things. Yes, we do need to make some changes, certainly in promotions, certainly in the number of officers we have out there. But one of the things that is not addressed, which is one of the biggest problems in the department, is officers to get time off. Not one word is mentioned in that consent decree. And they need to hire more police officers. We need to have time off. This weekend, a lot of people's days off are canceled. They've been waiting and waiting and waiting for a weekend off with their families.
Oh, yeah. Lollapalooza.
Yeah. Amy and Oliver.
Lollapalooza, and then we have the Air and Water Show, and then that whole Dan Ryan shutdown, that price tag was $323,000.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow by Wrigley Field.
Yeah, at the Lakeshore, Greg Livingston and his crew.
They've been advocating that we need to be locking these people up. If they want, it's one thing to make a statement. It's another thing to deliberately try and disrupt other people's lives because your message is more important than what they want to do. And so my suggestion has been to lock everybody up, and then you won't have that problem, because once you start locking people up, they'll get the message that they're going to go to jail, and they're going to spend some time in jail. They're going to have to come up with a bond, and they may think twice about it next time.
Well, if you see a tall blonde with a bunch of
Don't
aging
arrest
Lincoln
her.
Park Trixies making a scene at Lollapalooza, just put them in the cage. All right.
Well, I was more referring to the protest.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Oh
Lollapalooza is,
sure. Of
absolutely.
course. Yeah. Of course. The protests. Yeah.
yeah,
Kevin.
but certainly, we want people to come to Chicago and have a good time. We just want them to be safe. It is the job of every Chicago police officer to look out for the well-being of people, and that seems to be lacking in this consent decree. The realization of how hard we work every day and night, and that our officers put their lives on the line. They make sure that they are doing everything they can to make their communities safer. And that seems to be lacking, and the message isn't getting out there on that.
He is Kevin Graham. He is the president of the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police. Kevin, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Take
Have
care.
a good day.
Yeah. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer